I'm so honored and happy to be here among all of you today in this brand new info hub of the European Parliament. The European Parliament and World Press Photo share many important values, among which transparency, trustworthiness, and diversity. However, there's an even more fundamental value that we share, and that is the importance of safeguarding freedom of speech and of expression. World Press Photo connects the stories that matter from around the world to across the globe. We do that by, on the one hand, bringing important stories to as many people as possible, while on the other hand, offering those same people researched and fact-based context, allowing them to understand and interact with the stories and images. We do this because we firmly believe that by opening windows to different and diverse places, voices, and events, we are able to create deeper understanding and connections between people from around the world. But in order to be able to make these stories, as well to be able to see them and hear them, we need democracy. And there's no democracy without freedom of expression, and no freedom of expression without freedom of press. Today, in 2022, according to the Press Freedom Index published every year by Reporters Without Borders, there are only 6 countries in the world where the situation is good in terms of freedom of press. Only 6. If you compare that to the first Press Freedom Index in 2022, there were 48 countries that were considered being in good situation. So I don't think that I do it enough justice when I say that press freedom and therefore democracy is under threat in our world today. And that is why World Press Photo Foundation and the European Parliament wanted to create an exhibition that puts the spotlight on photographs that capture some of the most defining moments in our human history. Moments of resistance against racism, moments of hope and resilience, of protesters, moments that show the impact of modern-day migration, and moments that show the useless human cost of conflict. And that is what Iconic is about. The exhibition that I hope you'll be able to go and look at brings together 19 iconic images between 1955 and 2022, all of whom are World Press Photo winners. Some of them you will for sure already know, others might still be unknown to you. But what you will definitely discover today is how these specific images and events fit in the bigger picture. Because at the end of the day, that is the foundation of any democracy. Understanding what is happening, why it is happening, what its impact is, and what can we learn from it. Today, we're very happy and honored to have Jodi Bieber, who flew all the way from South Africa to come here, and Pietro Masturzo, who flew, well, from Milan, so less far away, but still very happy to have both of you here. And apart from the fact that both Jodi and Pietro are amazing photographers with great careers, working all over the world, including in difficult places and circumstances, and that they have both won World Press Photo of the Year, a couple of times actually. What I think really links them is that their photos in different ways have become part of our collective memory and have had a big impact. In the next 40 minutes, we will have the opportunity to hear firsthand from Jodi and then from Pietro. Both will present their work and share with us the stories behind their photos and the people behind those stories. They will show us how one image can become representative of a whole movement, a cause, a conflict. After their presentation, we'll do a Q&A where you'll be able to ask your questions, which I'm sure will be many, so please don't disappoint us. So without further ado, may I please ask Jodi to come and to share with us her story. Thank you so much.
Before I begin with my presentation, I'd like to firstly thank all of you for coming. I'd like to also thank World Press. I've had a very long relationship with them, possibly from the beginning of my career. I'd like to also thank Bibi Aisha and the many other people I've photographed and made reference to in this presentation today. I'd also like to thank my husband because he dotted the T's and the I's for this presentation that I'm giving you today. In 2009, I was in New York visiting different publications and presenting photo editors with my most recent portfolio. My heart was somewhere else. I had reached a stage in my career where I wanted to focus on long-term photographic projects, publishing photo books and exhibiting in museums and gallery shows. My agent at the time convinced me to see the editor of Time magazine. I shared my plans with the editor, Kira Pollock. I also presented her with my 2 monographs, Real Beauty and Soweto. Real Beauty explores shifting perceptions of beauty. I photograph women wearing their underwear in places familiar to them. I did not manipulate the images by using Photoshop or any other software to alter blemishes or any other perceived faults. Women today grow up consuming media believing that the perfect woman has a perfect body and flawless skin. Through Real Beauty, I questioned these perceptions. It was quite progressive for its time in 2008. Oops. I also presented my photographic book, Soweto, that I created in 2009 and 2010 prior to the World Cup football competition. This event would be held in South Africa. I wanted to explore an alternate visual narrative, a contemporary look at a place where struggle photography, specifically the Soweto uprising, was imprinted on the minds of the general public. We were in a new democracy, and I felt it important to provide a more contemporary vision of Soweto. Sam Nzima's photograph of Hector Peterson during the Soweto uprising in 1976 is a great example of an iconic photograph used to defend democracy. In both cases, my work challenged stereotypes. I received a call from the international photo editor of Time, asking me if I was interested in a portrait assignment to photograph a number of women in Kabul. Erin Baker, the Time magazine correspondent, lived in Kabul. She selected and interviewed the women for the article. This assignment was definitely something I was interested in, as I had a strong curiosity about the Islamic world. I'd worked in Pakistan, traveling to villages with the NGO Learning for Life, whose aim through local NGO workers was to try and shift the attitudes of parents towards sending their girl children to school. I spent time in villages across Pakistan, photographing, interviewing, and teaching a photographic workshop. This gave me the space to understand the culture of village life. This was before 9/11. In Iraq, I was commissioned by the Telegraph magazine to photograph the first woman in charge of the Iraqi police force in Basra. In Iran, I spent time along the Caspian Sea photographing Iranian holidaymakers. I photographed the free beach where women could swim in their headscarves, pants and t-shirts, whilst along the monitored beaches, women swam behind a curtain protruding into the sea. The moral policewomen were always close by. For the Time assignment, I flew from South Africa via Dubai to Kabul. On landing in Kabul, I met with the writer Erin Baker for the first time at the house she shared with other journalists. Erin had already interviewed the different women I was to photograph, and that suited me very well. She informed me about each of the women's backgrounds and story. I much prefer working on my own, giving focused time to the person I am photographing. The one request I had was to speak to the woman I would photograph beforehand. I prefer to create environmental portraits, a portrait within an environment that a person I am photographing feels comfortable. This provides us with a hint of the background of that person. I always request a minimum of an hour for each shoot, as most people are not used to the camera and being photographed. I take each person through a process, a journey, to capture something that feels real. Bibi Aisha is the only person who could not speak to me beforehand, as she was staying at the Women for Afghan Women Shelter, an NGO providing humanitarian aid and support services to vulnerable Afghan women, children, and families. It was interesting to travel through the streets of Kabul with Shay, a university student who was fluent in English and now my translator, driving in his car, taking me from location to location. He gave me an insider's perspective into everything Afghanistan. I wore a traditional shalwar kameez and headscarf. That brought me more comfort, and it was a simple gesture of respect. Before I get to the encounter with Bibi Aisha, I thought it would be important to show you 4 of the other women I photographed on this assignment. Murtaza Jamalzadeh was 25 years old when I met her. She had the Murtaza show on local television station. One could say she was the Oprah of Afghanistan. When she was 5, her family fled to Pakistan. She stayed there for 1 year and then moved to Vancouver in Canada. When I photographed her, she had recently come back to live in Afghanistan. She had a strong feeling for her country. Her television show dealt with sensitive issues of divorce and child and woman abuse. Some mullahs around the country had sent her death threats. She said she didn't care for fame or money, but social activism for women, children, and animal rights. Fawzwa Kufi, an Afghan parliamentary lawmaker, accomplished author, internationally known, outspoken advocate for the rights of women and children, democracy, and moderate Islam, was the first female in the Afghanistan parliament to be elected as second deputy speaker, and she headed the parliament's Women Affairs Commission. When I photographed her, she was a single mom with 2 children. She told me other members of parliament used to throw water bottles at her. Shireen Ghoul was convicted for 27 counts of murder and hijacking. She would pose as a prostitute and pick up men in their cars. She would take them to isolated areas and they were murdered and their car stolen. She was working with her family. Her husband, son, and brother-in-law had all been hanged. She was afraid of her husband, and with 6 children, she followed his wishes. At that time, 153 women were imprisoned in Kabul. Some of the sentences received were running away from your husband, 5 to 15 years, an affair, 1 to 3 years, murdering your husband between 17 and 20 years. When I was in Kabul, there were 36 women in prison for killing their husband. Rabina Jalali, a former Olympic athlete, represented Afghanistan at the 2004 and 2008 Olympics. She also ran for a seat in the lower house of Afghanistan Parliament. Jalali attracted international attention for running while wearing the hijab and was one of the first 2 women ever to represent Afghanistan at the Olympic Games. I photographed her at the Gaza Stadium, and this is where she used to train. In previous times, under the Taliban, the stadium was used as a public space to stone women and to cut off their hands. I think it is safe to say that most photographers, when working, are living and breathing that specific moment they are in, and have no idea how things will unfold. This leads me to my encounter with Bibi Aisha. Shay and I drove to the shelter where we were met by armed security guards at the entrance. This was for good reason. We were to witness an angry husband being removed from a reconciliation meeting with his wife and family. We were then escorted to meet the director, who informed us that Bibi Aisha was still traumatized. If there was any indication of re-traumatization during the session, we would have to end the session. Bibi Aisha was given away at the age of 14 by her family as settlement and compensation. The tradition is known as Bard and is practiced today in certain areas of Afghanistan and Pakistan. A female from a criminal's family is given to the victim's family as a servant or a bride. Aisha ran away from this abusive situation with her husband and in-laws, and their neighbor informed the police. She was sentenced and imprisoned. Once she received amnesty, Aisha was taken back to the village to face a tribal court and was sentenced again. She was held down by her father and family members, and her husband cut off her nose and ears. This form of punishment was intended to teach other women in the village that running away from your husband is not an option. She was left to bleed out, but the US military found her and cared for her before she was placed at Women for Afghan Women shelter. I decided not to re-interview Aisha as I knew her story, but rather collaborate with her in creating a strong photograph. When Shay and I were introduced to her and her social worker, her beauty struck me first, and then I noticed her nose. We were led into a room with a red carpet and cushions along the wall and a white fan and a radio. Natural light streamed in through the window, which was a relief, as I only work with natural light and a reflector. Through Shay, I first chatted to Aisha about the radio that was in the room and what she liked to listen to. I was hoping that the background of the room would give me some hints of Aisha, but nothing echoed her name in the space. It was a communal room where many of the women slept at night. I asked Aisha to stand close to the window where the natural light was entering the room. I told her that I couldn't imagine what she had experienced or couldn't take away how she felt, but I asked her to close her eyes and think about her inner strength and power, and then to open her eyes and look into the camera. That is when I took the photograph. When I took the photograph, for an instant looking at Aisha through the viewfinder, I thought of the woman I had photographed from the village in Baraka in the Democratic Republic of Congo, who had been raped numerous times by soldiers whilst having to collect food and water. I also thought of the iconic image of the Afghan girl, a 1984 photograph portrait by photojournalist Steve McCurry. I spent about 3 hours photographing Aisha, and then we said our goodbyes. I went on to photograph Sakina, who was also in the shelter, and then we had lunch. Between all of this, my insecurity ran deep, and I started thinking that maybe I wouldn't satisfy the expectations of time, as Aisha's pose was one of defiance and power rather than that of victimhood. I phoned the writer Erin Baker from the director's office, and she said to me not to worry, as the magazine wouldn't have sent me all the way from South Africa if they thought I wouldn't succeed in fulfilling the assignment. I left it at that, and we went on to the next shoot. I edited what I thought to be the best photographs and sent them to Time. The next thing, I received a phone call from them asking me to relay every aspect of the shoot, as they were considering using the photograph on the cover, and that they did. The photograph and the title provoked a massive response all over the world. The magazine went on the stands, and within minutes, my image of Aisha moved quickly through the world. Television, phone, radio, and email interviews began. Hundreds and hundreds of blogs introduced people's diverse opinion, including the pairing of the image and the headline, "What happens if we leave Afghanistan?" The photograph and the title provoked a massive response all over the world. For the West, for many, this pairing of the photograph and title was seen as war pornography. South Africans who had no involvement with Afghanistan-US politics first saw this beautiful woman on the cover and then her nose. Many women in South Africa could identify. In 2021, 1 in 5, that's 21% of women had experienced physical violence by their intimate partner. A feminist academic from a university in the UK made the claim that I had a stylist, a photographic studio, and lighting, and took issue that I objectified Aisha. This was not the case at all. The Taliban announced that this was not an act that they condoned. The one thing knew that I had created a portrait with the utmost respect, and Aisha was now safely in the USA. Aisha was to go through a healing process, numerous operations, learn a new language, and find her feet in a completely different cultural environment. Eventually, she moved in with an Afghan-American family who she still lives with today. In 2011, I was awarded with the World Press Photo of the Year for my photograph of Bibi Aisha. The exhibition traveled the world, and so did I. This was an opportunity to share amongst varying communities, institutions, educational spaces, my other photographic works, and to speak about photographing Aisha. It was a year that I became more familiar with communicating about my many projects. It made me realize that once you put your photograph into the world, people respond from their own perspectives, histories, and experience, sometimes in ways you would never have expected. In February 2021, Aisha contacted me for the first time through FaceTime. It was a profound experience. Prior to social media, most people never got to see their own photographs or reconnect with the photographer or person being photographed. Today, with all her strength and resilience, she still continues to struggle to find funding to study. She would like to become a nurse, publish a manuscript, and give public lectures about her story. She wants to inspire and encourage other women around the world. You would imagine, we all would, with her iconic image that is so well known, the world would be her oyster, but it is not. This brings me to the question, does the iconic photo contribute to defending democracy? When an image becomes iconic, it provokes many different communities into conversation or action. It highlights important contemporary issues. It goes viral via different platforms, imprinting itself on the minds of millions and sometimes billions of people with varying responses, perceptions, perspectives, historical framework, and experiences. The more it is seen, the more people keep the conversation around the specific issue alive. It has a better chance of helping to change perceptions, connecting us as a society and leading us one step at a time closer to achieving democratic solutions. In Aisha's case, I would hope that her photograph is imprinted in the minds of men and women as an iconic symbol of defiance against violence against women. As much as certain countries want women to remain second-class citizens, the move towards democracy and equality will eventually be achieved. Images do not need to be iconic to provoke change or contribute to defending democracy. However, an iconic image will receive more attention by the organic nature of it going viral. The question remains, are we in a time where we will see many more iconic images than in the past? Millions of images are produced daily and are viewed through social media platforms with the flick of our finger on our mobile devices and shared over and over again. Will iconic images live in our memory for shorter periods of time, creating superficial noise for a brief moment and do little to provoke, shift perceptions and contribute to defending democracy? Or will a new multiplicity of iconic images bring about a new consciousness by bringing communities closer together to defend democracy? Thank you. And today we're lucky enough to have a video message from Bibi Aisha herself.
It's really changed my life completely. I come out from Afghanistan to come to United States. I have done many surgeries in my face. I have a new nose because of that pictures. And a lot of people had to help me to support me with my surgeries too. As for me, it's a very, very good fact for my life. And like I have enough freedom for school. I'm free. I can go outside. And no one stopped me what I want to do, what I don't want to do that. I will get a message to them. I'm there for them always. And one day in the future, they can see me and TV or show. I gave the speech of women's or human rights for everyone and who's tortured and who have the same kind of problem I had it. And I want first I want to educate myself. I wanted my goal to go to college and to finish college and then became a one day spokesperson.
Good afternoon. And let me first of all say thank you. Thank you to the European Parliament and to the World Press Photo Foundation for this exhibition, first of all, and for inviting me to participate with this speech and with my photo. It is really a big honor for me to be here in this place, European Parliament, which in a way is, I feel, to be linked to because of my studies. I mean, I'm honored not only as a European citizen, but also because this was supposed to be a place where I could have worked. I studied international relations and diplomatic affairs at university, and so you understand that for me it's very important to be here today. This was for me a point, a place of reference during my studies. Then I decided to take another direction, maybe not too far from my studies, but I decided to be close to the people, to meet the people, to tell their stories, and to present documents to the institution. So I'm very proud and I'm very honored to be here. So in 2009, as a very young photographer, not very young, I was 29 at that time, I decided to go to Iran. I have been driven by the interest of documenting the peoples in the face, the fight, the struggle of the people in the face of oppression and in the face of the violation of human rights. So in 2009, I decided to go to Iran as my first, as the first step of my research, let's say. I found myself in a very complicated country, complicated also for the freedom of press, which is very, I mean, let's say, denied. And so it was very difficult because I didn't have any experience. I mean, I was a photographer since like 2 years at that time. I started in 2007. And so my experience was very, very low. And I want to show. Voila. So I found myself in the middle of a very important historical moment, and that, I mean, was an important moment even before the elections. Then we all remember what happened after. But also in the days before, I entered the country like 3 weeks before the elections. So I saw the country preparing for the elections. And for the first time, as I was told, people start to get to the streets before the elections, supporting their candidate. I mean, many people I met were supporting the moderate candidate, Hossein Moussaoui. And there were a lot of hopes in the streets in the days before. A lot of people, a lot of women were like supporting, going to the streets. Here we are in a student house where people were like supporting a rally which was down in the streets. This was the rally, mostly by cars, because it was very dangerous to be in the streets, even by cars, anyway. Then, on June 12, the presidential election were held, and the result was, as we know, confirmation of Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, the former president, the president in charge, actually, and people, we were very, very like there was a big hope, as I say, were, let's say, disappointed, but they started to. Here I am in the house. I was very lucky because I was all the time with the students. There was these statistics at that time saying that the 70% of the Iranian population was under 30. So basically, I was with them, with the people who were my age, actually. So it was very easy for me to get in touch and to create empathy among us. And I was lucky because I spent all the time with her. I was in an hotel just for the first 2 nights, and then I was sleeping with them, trying to participate to the demonstration before and then after. Because actually, after 2 days, I entered the country. I had a bad experience. I was like stopped by the police, arrested for 3 days. They keep all my equipment. They keep my camera, all the material I've shot since then, and so it was very hard for me to start again photographing. And when the presidential the elections started, and I mean the results were given, all the the people were getting to the streets and a big protest started. I was afraid, but I was afraid not only for myself, because the people who were with me, they didn't want to go to the streets and be arrested again, and it was dangerous, especially for them, actually. So I was kept in the house and trying to figure out how to tell, how to, to photograph this so important moment, and it was very frustrating. And one night, I heard like voices, like people shouting from outside. I thought it was coming from the streets, and they explained me that was a kind of a protest started back in 1979, at the time of the Islamic Revolution, and that people shouting were on their rooftops, of their own houses, and so I was like illuminated. I was like, okay, this is the way. This is the they explained that. I mean, it was just what I was looking for. I went to Iran in 2009 was the 30th anniversary of the revolution. It was a very important moment, and I was trying to make a connection of that moment. With that moment and the revolution and the 30 year of experience of the Islamic revolutions. So I found a way. Okay, I said, let's go to the roof and let's see what is going on. And I found myself. I missed a picture actually, which is very important. On 1 week after, during the election, during the protest. Neda Aga Sultan, which then became a symbol, was killed by the Basiji, the Iranian police. And this was another important moment, because then after that the protests became even more aggressive, the people got very, very crazy for this. And as I said, I found myself in it's very difficult for me to describe my feelings, my emotions, because at the very beginning I couldn't see anything. I just heard shouting and echoes coming from around the city, around me, but I couldn't see anybody. And then some people start to appear on the rooftop. Young guys, like men, girls. These are friends, the students I was with, and it was very emotional, but very scary also, because they were all very scared about to be seen with a photographer on the roof, and I had to be very low profile and to hide my camera, to be very careful. It was very difficult also to convince them to be photographed, because of course they were very, very afraid about to be recognized. And I tried to explain them that I was obliged also, because there was no light, to use long expressions. So they were like in the picture, they would have been appeared like blur or out of focus. So they weren't recognizable at all. And then after that, I show also the picture I was taking. Of course, I showed only to the people that were with me, but I used the same precautions also with the other people that were far away. And and this is a series I took. I didn't take so many pictures, like 30, maybe 40, 50 pictures, which now with digital camera is like nothing. But I choose just the strong one. When I took these photos, I remember exactly the moment I saw this scene, and my camera was like hid with the scarf because they didn't want me to appear to be seen with the camera. So I had scarf. I couldn't even see through the lens. I saw the scene. I put my camera on the balcony and I tried to frame the scene. It was amazing, and so basically I didn't even see what was in the frame actually. Then I came back down. I downloaded the pictures and I saw these photos. That was also my favorite in the series. And these are more pictures from. I spent like 1 week, 10 days going around in different parts of the cities, trying to analyze and to explore all the parts of the city, the rich one, the medium class, the poor part of the city, and so I got this series, and I found also very emotional moment. These are brother and sisters that they haven't seen each other since long time because she was living in Canada and he was a doctor, dentist living in Iran after moving back to Iran from Italy where he used to live. And so for me also personally, not only professionally, was a really an emotional and deep experience. Of course, I didn't know that I was the only one maybe among the photographers and the foreign photographer and also the Iranian photographers who were speaking about this kind of protest, which for me was very important and symbolic because many pictures were going out of Iran in that day, especially pictures taken with the phone cameras and not professional pictures, but which was very, very important for the rest of the world to see what was going on. But this protest was like miscovered, undercovered. Well, now if I look back to my archive after this, I've been working in many other places, and as I told you, I was focused on the fight, on the struggle for human rights, for freedom, for democracy. And if I look back to my archive now, I shouldn't be very optimistic actually about the power of photography. And when I was invited to reflect on this issue, I was like, they bring me like in a crisis, even if it's something I question, not every day, but very often, about the role of photojournalism and what we can do and how we can help to defend democracy. I show you something to tell you what I'm speaking about. For example, in 2010, I was in Myanmar, in Burma, when Aung San Suu Kyi was released. I was back also in Myanmar in 2012 when her party, the NLD, the National League for Democracy, was allowed to participate to the first election, which won. Actually, there were by-election. I mean, only few seats in the parliament were available, but they got almost all the seats. So it seems to be like a reborn for Myanmar. If we see what happened like 10 years after, we know that nothing changed. She was arrested again. She was also criticized, actually, in 2017 for not defending for not taking a strong position for the Rohingya people, the minority living in the north of Myanmar. Then I start covering the so-called Arab Springs. I was in Libya, I was in Egypt beforehand, and it seems to be a very important day. We all think about it was like an important, an historical moment for democracy in the North Africa and the Middle East, especially. So I just took few pictures from my archive, which the ones I think are the more representative, also the more iconic, let's say, no, and then I covered the conflict between Israel and Palestine. I've been working a lot in Palestine, actually, both in Gaza and in the West Bank, and now I'm not speaking about the conflict because I'm sure you already know a lot about. But here's Gaza again. This is a funeral in 2018 during the Great March of Return, where Palestinians used to gather for more than 1 month, actually, along the border with Israel to protest for the rights to go back to their land, and a lot of casualties, a lot of young guys were killed, many were injured. And this was the funeral of a journalist, of a Palestinian journalist. So how can I be optimistic about the power of photography? But still, despite that, I think that just, only the fact that I'm still questioning, if I look at the exhibition, if I look back at my own archive, and I'm still questioning about, and I criticize myself, my work, and what we have seen, thanks to the WordPress photo also, who elected. I mean, we need pictures, we need photojournalists, we need the freedom of expression and so ever. But now in a moment where we are like hundred of thousand, maybe million of images are uploaded in internet every day, we need to select. And WordPress photo is very good in doing this. And I think it's very important to go and to come here like 10 years later, 20 years later, maybe 30 years later to reflect. And even if nothing has changed, even if maybe the world is going worse and worse, we still are questioning. And this is the base of democracy, to doubt. I mean, I'm strongly believe that the doubts, questioning ourselves, even about events that happened many years ago and are still happening. This is the very base of democracy. And so thank you for inviting me, and thank you for the honor you gave me.